something to fix this in the physical world in this particular instance. There was another incident where I woke up in the middle of the night to hear someone in the backyard saying condition red as I woke up. I tried to turn off turn on the lights. I had a big bank of light switches that would turn lights on all around the house immediately. When I reached for it, a man and a woman, not aliens, came into the room from the far end of the room, from the door, and moved across the room, immediately in some way overpowered me. Everything went black. I started feeling pressure again and again on the left side of my head, and then it ended. And I woke up the next morning. I found the alarm system all blown. In other words, all the windows were open, but the alarm system was still running. It was not triggered. And I had a lump in my ear. When I tried to get it taken out by the doctor, he diagnosed it as a small cyst in the pinna of my ear. It turned out to be a little white disc, and it moved down into my earlobe when he touched it with a scalpel. So he didn't try to excise it because it would have involved dissecting the whole ear. And he then had a little corner of it which we sent to a biologist at the Southwest Research Institute, not to a regular pathology lab, who observed that it was covered with little cilia, and this apparently was what enabled it to move. A few days after the operation, it moved back up into the same place in my ear where it had been in the beginning, and it has remained there ever since because I've been unwilling to deal with it, frankly.
Uh-huh.
So that's another piece of that's a pice of physical evidence of something, but it wasn't aliens, it was people. But who were they, Rick? And
yeah,
where does
were they? Well,
what were they doing there?
Well, yeah, and you kind of wonder how they got there. That's kind of.
Well, it wasn't hard to figure that out. I heard him walking in the woods. That's what woke me up.
Right. Yeah. Well, so those were real people.
Yeah, they walked up to the house and did this. They were real.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's still there, though. What did they do, and why is it? What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the kinds of, experiences that my volunteers reported, I kind of categorize as consciousness-to-consciousness contact.
Oh, great. Well, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to talk about this. It's very important, I think, because he's talking now about consciousness-to-consciousness contact, and on some level, no matter how physical this all appears, in some way this is real, and this is where I think we need to go to understand it. We'll be right back. This is Whitley Strieber. We're talking with Rick Strassman, the author of DMT, the Spirit Molecule, presently making a documentary about DMT research. I think that's going to be out in a few months, Rick, and it's going to be very exciting. William Henry is going to be talking to Rick in the subscriber section and talking about this whole phenomenon and the distant past and certain imagery from the past that he has shown Rick, and I think it's going to be quite fascinating. Now, let's talk about this concept of consciousness to consciousness communication. What do you mean exactly by that?
Oh, I guess I'm defining it almost in terms of what it's not. It's not, any kind of contact in which people actually have got any kind of, any kind of objective evidence. There's no stigmata. There aren't any pieces of machinery or tools. There's no scars. There's no bleeding points. Those kinds of things. But it's an undeniable, real, and the experience is, most of the volunteers who describe these kinds of contact experiences describe them as more real than real. There was just no question it was happening. There was also no question in the completely unique aspect of the contact. It was very easily distinguishable in people's minds from a dream or from a hallucination or from an imaginary kind of a, mental construct. It was, in their experience, as real and even more real than them speaking with me in the hospital room at the time. So that was part of the problem I was having in terms of interpreting people's experiences as a, psychological event. Like it was projection, it was some kind of a wish, fulfillment in terms of, kind of classical, Freudian psychology, or even a Jungian archetypal experience. It was actually happening. People were being approached and communicated with these entities that looked like bees or mantises or crocodiles or, mannequins or those kinds of things. There was an exchange of information, especially with regard to the human capacity of experiencing emotion. These entities, they were disembodied, and one of their interests in humans, seemed to be the, feelings that humans experience through their bodies, which, as a rule are considered emotional experiences, like happiness and love and sadness and fear, those kinds of things, on which these entities, as a result of being disembodied, no longer were able to experience themselves. That was one of the major elements of their interest in us. Also, they were interested in kind of, portraying a hyper, kind of technological universe in which they existed, in terms of machinery, in terms of spacecraft, space travel. They also seemed interested in, the welfare of people, either individually or collectively. But at the same time, they were incredibly powerful. They weren't to be messed around with. They could be quite frightening in their interactions with our volunteers sometimes.
In what sense?
Some people were, some people experienced, being raped. Others are being eaten alive, or being hurt somehow. That was pretty infrequent, but still, the experiences were striking enough when they did happen. If people started to feel these threatening and kind of hurtful interactions, the most important thing, for them to do was to let go, so to speak, almost to stop resisting, because what seemed quite common is if people started to undergo frightful experiences with these entities and started, to resist, then the experiences even went, further downhill. So the important, element was to open to it, was to accept it, and, was to let go any resistance. In which case, if the person was able to do that, the quality of the interaction would then, change into into one that was more pleasant and, beneficent.
Now, this consciousness you speak of, where is it?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Where is this consciousness, this other consciousness that you speak of?
Well, at first I was thinking it was just purely a projection of these, of the volunteers.
Right.
Or it was their brain chemistry, gone awry. But, I spent a lot of time thinking about it in preparation for writing the book. And, especially afterwards, I've done a lot of thinking about the location of these consciousnesses. And, I'm forced to assume or to believe or to even state that I think these consciousnesses they exist in a spiritual universe, in a non-corporeal kind of reality that's parallel, freestanding, independent of us, and in certain circumstances that we are able to cross through the boundary or the barrier that separates us from non-corporeal realities. Every night, everybody experiences a small, version of that when they dream. But I think in some circumstances, especially in terms of our studies, in which these individuals got a high dose of DMT, that there was a more concerted and a more focused entryway into these freestanding spiritual non-corporeal realms.